The unexpected encounter. In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, far beyond the well-known borders of intergalactic civilizations, there was a forgotten planet. It lay in a relatively unremarkable part of the cosmos, a place few ever thought to explore. This was where humanity had decided to take its first steps beyond Earth, planting the seeds of what would become their first off-world colonies. The planet, while not rich in valuable resources or anything of particular interest to the great galactic powers, had one unique feature. It was a place where humanity could grow without being under the watchful eye of the more advanced and powerful species that inhabited the stars. The human colonies were small, just a handful of outposts scattered around the planet's surface. These colonies were far from sophisticated, relying mostly on old Earth technologies, but they had a singular purpose: survival and expansion. The humans, though primitive by galactic standards, had always thrived through adaptability and determination. They had no idea that their small, insignificant presence would soon become the catalyst for a monumental conflict. Far across the galaxy, the Kamsu, a species known for their brutal aggression and absolute mercilessness, had been hunting for a new target. The Kamsu were not like any race humanity had encountered before. A towering species with a ruthless hierarchy and a culture built on domination, they had conquered countless worlds in their relentless pursuit of power. The Kamsu had no use for diplomacy or negotiation. They were a race of warriors, and their primary objective was simple: to conquer, subdue, and assimilate any species they encountered. The Kamsu were feared by all who crossed their path. One fateful day, a Kamsu reconnaissance vessel, part of a larger fleet, detected something curious: a faint signal from a small, unexplored planet on the edge of the galaxy. The planet, home to the humans' fledgling colonies, had not been noticed by any other advanced species before. The Kamsu had never heard of these humans, and in their arrogance, they dismissed them as unworthy of attention. But as their ships approached the planet, the truth quickly became apparent. At first glance, the human settlement seemed pathetic. A few dozen colonies dotted the landscape, their structures built from basic materials scavenged from their home planet. There were no signs of advanced technology, no weaponry, no fleet of ships to protect them. The Kamsu, confident in their superiority, saw the settlement as easy prey. They had dealt with far more advanced civilizations in their time, and no species in the galaxy had ever been able to withstand the might of the Kamsu for long. Surely, these humans would be no different. The Kamsu attacked swiftly, deploying their ground forces in an overwhelming show of strength. Their initial assault was swift, brutal, and devastating. The humans had no real military to speak of, no weapons that could stand against the power of the Kamsu's fleets. It should have been an easy victory, humanity's fate sealed before they even knew what was happening. But there was something the Kamsu had not accounted for. They had underestimated the humans. Despite their primitive technology and lack of advanced military training, the humans did not give in. They fought back with everything they had. It was not because they were more powerful. They weren't. It wasn't because they were more skilled. They weren't. It was because, in the face of certain destruction, the human spirit refused to break. They were driven by something the Kamsu could not understand: the desire to survive, the will to resist. The human settlers, scattered and outgunned, began to organize. Led by their unexpected leader, a resourceful and determined captain named Tun, the humans used their environment to their advantage. They began laying traps, improvising defenses, and using every tool they had at their disposal to fight back. The Kamsu's soldiers, expecting to steamroll through the settlement with ease, found themselves caught off guard. The humans, though outmatched, fought with a tenacity that the Kamsu had never encountered before. While the Kamsu were formidable opponents, their strength alone could not overpower the human resolve. As the days wore on, the Kamsu found themselves in a battle they had never anticipated. They had assumed that the humans would crumble under the weight of their assault. But the humans were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something greater. They were fighting for their homes, for their families, and for the future they had worked so hard to build. In the chaos of the conflict, something remarkable happened. The humans, driven by desperation, began to learn. They studied the Kuk-Kamsu's tactics, their technology, and their weaknesses. They reverse-engineered Kuk-Kamsu weapons, adapting them to suit their needs. What the Kuk-Kamsu had assumed would be a massacre turned into a grueling, drawn-out struggle that forced them to rethink their approach. It was a battle of attrition, and slowly but surely, humanity began to turn the tide. The Kuk-Kamsu, for the first time in their history, were forced to retreat. They had misjudged the humans. They had thought them weak, unworthy of notice, but in their arrogance, they had failed to recognize the strength of the human spirit. In the aftermath of the battle, the humans stood victorious, but they knew this was only the beginning. The Kuk-Kamsu had been forced to pull back, but they would return. The galaxy was a vast, dangerous place, filled with unknown species and potential threats. Humanity's victory, while important, was just a first step. The humans knew they would have to become stronger, more organized, and better prepared for the battles to come. But for now, they stood triumphant, their courage and ingenuity having defeated an enemy far more powerful than themselves. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity, though small and seemingly insignificant, was a force to be reckoned with. The story of their survival would spread far and wide, and the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. A glimpse of human ingenuity. The retreat of the Kuk-Kamsu was far from the end of humanity's struggles. It was merely the beginning of something much larger. The Kuk-Kamsu had not only underestimated humanity's ability to survive, but also its ability to learn, adapt, and innovate in the face of overwhelming odds. The invasion had left the small human colonies in shambles, but they had not been destroyed. Instead, the humans had made their first significant stand in the galaxy, and it was a victory that would change everything. However, the real battle was just beginning. As the dust settled and the chaos of the invasion died down, Captain Ilaritan stood amidst the remnants of the human settlement, surveying the destruction. The Kuk-Kamsu might have retreated, but their damage had been severe. The planet's surface was scared by battle, buildings were reduced to rubble, and the survivors were few. Yet, as Captain Tan looked over the faces of the men and women who had stood with her in the defense of their colony, there was something in their eyes that gave her hope. They had fought bravely, and they had learned. The humans had not simply resisted. They had fought with a level of resourcefulness that surprised even themselves. Where the Kuk-Kamsu had expected helpless civilians to fold under the pressure, they had encountered a species capable of ingenuity and sheer grit. The human settlers, while outmatched in terms of weaponry and technology, had used the environment around them to their advantage. Ilaritan's command had been crucial to their survival. She was a leader who understood the value of preparation and quick thinking. Even with limited resources, she had organized the colony's scattered defenses, setting up traps, fortifications, and utilizing the planet's natural geography to create choke points. It was not just military tactics they had used. It was their creativity. The humans had hacked into the Kuk-Kamsu's own communication systems, sending false signals to confuse their attackers and creating distractions that slowed down the invasion. The Kuk-Kamsu had been caught off guard by the humans' ability to turn the battlefield into their own advantage. The technology that the humans had been using was rudimentary at best. Old Earth-made weapons, some scavenged tech from past encounters with other species, and a smattering of improvised devices. But what made these weapons effective was the mind behind them. The humans didn't simply fight. They adapted. Captain Tan and her team had studied the Kuk-Kamsu's tactics during the assault, and they had used that knowledge to craft new strategies. The Kuk-Kamsu relied on overwhelming force, but the humans understood that brute strength was not the only way to win. They focused on tactics, surprise, and using what little they had to exploit weaknesses in the enemy's strategy. One of the most striking examples of human ingenuity came when a small group of settlers, led by Chief Engineer Lian Zhao, managed to reverse engineer a Kuk-Kamsu battle drone that had been left behind after the initial attack. The drone, though damaged, still held valuable data about the aliens' weapon systems and tactics. Zhao, a quiet but brilliant engineer, had the foresight to study the machine despite its initial malfunctioning state. Working day and night, he and his team painstakingly repaired and reprogrammed the drone, turning it into a weapon that could be used against the very invaders who had brought it. The Kuk-Kamsu had relied heavily on their technological superiority, but in the end, they had failed to recognize the one thing that humanity possessed in abundance: the ability to think outside the box. While their alien weaponry was advanced, the human settlers' adaptability allowed them to make use of alien technology in ways the Kuk-Kamsu never intended. The moment the Kuk-Kamsu discovered that a reprogrammed drone was being used against them, panic set in. It was a feeling they were not accustomed to. The very technology that they had considered their greatest strength had been turned against them, and the humans had done it not with overwhelming force, but with innovation and intelligence. The battle didn't end with the repulsion of the Kuk-Kamsu. It evolved into a turning point. The humans realized that they were not doomed to live in the shadows of galactic giants. They were not helpless in the face of a galaxy that seemed indifferent to their existence. In fact, the victory over the Kuk-Kamsu's initial invasion was a lesson in their own strength, their ingenuity, resourcefulness, and most of all, their collective drive to protect their future. The humans had shown that, though small in number and limited in technology, they were a species capable of surprising even the most powerful adversaries. As the survivors began to rebuild their colonies, they understood that the future would not be about merely defending their homes. It would be about expanding their influence, advancing their technologies, and preparing for the inevitable return of the Kuk-Kamsu. The human race, once a scattered collection of small colonies, now began to unify under a common cause. They realized that their survival depended not just on fighting back, but on pushing forward, on growing stronger and wiser with each day. Captain Tan, with the help of engineers like Zhao and countless others who had contributed to the human resistance effort, started drafting a blueprint for the future. Their immediate concern was to develop better technologies to defend themselves, but they knew that they couldn't simply rely on mere defense. The next encounter with the Kuk-Kamsu, or any other species who might seek to conquer them, could not be one where they were playing catch-up. Humanity would need to go on the offensive. They began collaborating with other species in the galaxy, hoping to form alliances with races that had also suffered under the brutal rule of the Kuk-Kamsu. While their technology and military strategies were still far behind many of the galaxy's advanced civilizations, they made up for it with an unyielding determination to survive. The human resolve was stronger than any weapon, and it was this spirit that began to draw other civilizations to their cause. The humans were no longer just a small, insignificant race among the stars. They were beginning to show the galaxy that they were a species capable of standing up for themselves. They had already proven that they could fight against overwhelming odds, and now they would prove that they could rise to the challenges of an uncertain and dangerous future. In the days that followed, as the humans pushed forward with their plans, they encountered unexpected challenges and learned lessons that would shape their development for years to come. But through it all, one thing was certain: humanity had found its voice, and it would no longer be silenced. The aftermath of the conflict. The initial victory against the Kuk-Kamsu was nothing short of miraculous. Humanity, small and seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy, had repelled an attack from one of the most feared species in the universe. The victory, however, came at a tremendous cost. The planet's surface was marred by the remnants of the battle. The air still heavy with the residue of destroyed ships, the earth scorched by weapons far beyond the technology of humanity. The survivors, though triumphant, were left with a bitter understanding that the war was far from over. Captain Ilara Tan, standing on the planet's surface amid the rubble, allowed herself only a brief moment of reflection. Her people had fought valiantly, using every scrap of ingenuity they had, but now the focus had to shift to what came next. The Kamsu would not simply accept defeat. This victory was but a temporary reprieve, a short-lived triumph in the face of a much larger war to come. It was clear now that humanity could not remain in isolation any longer. The Kamsu had come to their corner of the galaxy with devastating force, and there was no guarantee that the humans would be able to hold their ground if they returned in full force. The small colony had managed to scrape together a victory through creativity and raw determination. But now it was time to build, to grow stronger. Humanity's future would depend on more than just fighting back. It would depend on their ability to unify, innovate, and make allies with other races who might one day become vital to their survival. The survivors of the initial attack, those who had lived to tell the tale, gathered in what was left of their settlements, forming councils to address their next steps. Their first priority was rebuilding, not just their homes, but their spirit. In the wake of destruction, the people had to remember what they were fighting for: the future of their children, the future of their species, and the future of a world they had fought so hard to protect. Captain Tan convened a council of her trusted advisors, including Chief Engineer Zhao, who had played an instrumental role in the battle by adapting the Kamsu's technology for human use. Zhao's mind was a wellspring of ideas, and his knowledge of technology was unparalleled. But even he knew that the human race could not stand alone forever. Their weapons, while effective, were far from sufficient to withstand a prolonged war with a species like the Kamsu. "We can't afford to rely on desperation and trickery next time," Captain Tan stated, her voice carrying the weight of the reality that faced them. "We need to build a force capable of standing up to them head-on. If we don't, we'll be wiped out." Zhao nodded in agreement, his eyes thoughtful. "We'll need allies, Captain. The Kamsu are far from the only threat in this galaxy, and if we want to survive, we need to make our presence known, to forge connections that will give us the resources and technology we need to defend ourselves." The realization had begun to settle in. Humanity was no longer a small, isolated race. They had become part of something larger, something far more dangerous. The galaxy was filled with species that were far more advanced and powerful than humanity, and the Kamsu were only one of many who might seek to dominate or destroy them. "We need to start building relationships with other species," Captain Tan said, determination in her voice. "We need to send out diplomatic missions, trade for technology, and learn as much as we can. But we also need to be prepared for betrayal. We cannot trust any race completely." In the following weeks, the humans did just that. They sent emissaries to nearby star systems, reaching out to alien species, hoping to forge some kind of alliance. Their first attempts were met with wariness, even disdain. The galaxy had seen countless species fall to the Kamsu and other conquerors before, and many races were hesitant to help a fledgling human race. The humans were seen as too young, too inexperienced, and too untrustworthy. But the humans, like their ancestors before them, refused to give up. They used their ingenuity once more, finding ways to prove their worth. In some cases, they traded technology or knowledge. In others, they offered their assistance in neutralizing threats from rival alien factions. Slowly, their reputation began to grow, and with it, the realization that humanity might be a valuable ally after all. As word of their victory against the Kamsu spread, more and more species began to take notice. Some were skeptical, unsure if humanity could maintain their resilience, but others were intrigued by the audacity of the human spirit, their capacity to resist even in the face of certain destruction. Humanity was a species unlike any other, and that made them both an asset and a potential threat. Amid these new alliances, however, tensions were mounting. Some of the galaxy's more dominant races viewed humanity's growing influence with suspicion. They had not forgotten the brutality of the Kamsu, and now they feared that humanity, with its resilience and growing technological capabilities, might become a threat in its own right. Some races sought to undermine humanity's progress, attempting to destabilize their alliances, spreading rumors that the humans were not to be trusted. Captain Tan knew this, and she understood the gravity of the situation. The alliances humanity had built were fragile at best, and she could feel the pressure mounting. The next move, the next step humanity took, would be the most crucial of all. There was no going back. The first battle had been won, but the war was far from over. As humanity began to rebuild, they were not only preparing for the return of the Kukkamsu, they were preparing for a galaxy that might one day see them as a threat. The question was no longer about whether humanity could survive, but whether they could thrive in a galaxy that had no place for underdogs. But Captain Tan had made up her mind. Humanity's time had come. They would no longer cower in the shadows. The future was theirs to shape, and they would shape it with their resilience, their ingenuity, and their relentless determination to not just survive, but to thrive. The Kukkamsu might have underestimated humanity once, but they would never do so again. The rise of a new force. The victory over the Kukkamsu had sparked something far greater than just a fleeting moment of triumph. The humans, who had once existed in the quiet shadows of the galaxy, had begun to carve out a place for themselves in the larger cosmic order. The battle had not only shown that they could survive in the face of overwhelming odds, it had awakened a new understanding within them. They could thrive. This was no longer a fight for survival alone. Humanity now had a stake in the future of the galaxy, and with this newfound realization came an undeniable truth. They would no longer be passive observers in the cosmos. Captain Ilara Tan stood at the helm of the human fleet as they prepared to depart from their war-torn planet. Her eyes scanned the horizon, watching the stars stretch out before them. It was a sight that had once filled her with awe, but now it carried with it a heavy weight of responsibility. The war against the Kukkamsu had opened humanity's eyes to the dangers of the galaxy, but it had also shown them their potential. They were no longer just survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with, and that force was about to take its first steps toward becoming something more. In the wake of the Kukkamsu invasion, humanity had begun a rapid transformation. The first priority had been rebuilding the shattered colonies. Infrastructure was restored, damaged settlements rebuilt, and life slowly returned to some semblance of normalcy. But behind the scenes, something much more significant was occurring. The people of Earth and its colonies were beginning to unite, to think not as isolated groups of settlers, but as a single powerful entity. The time for isolation was over. The galaxy was too dangerous, too vast to be faced alone. Under Captain Tan's leadership, the human race began to establish its first true military and scientific councils. Scientists and engineers, who had once been spread across the colonies, came together to share their knowledge and ideas. A new generation of warriors, engineers, and strategists rose to the occasion. They no longer relied on the outdated technologies they had scavenged from their home planet, or the few scraps they had been able to reverse engineer from the Kukkamsu. They began developing their own cutting-edge technology, blending human ingenuity with whatever alien resources they had been able to gather. They were creating weapons, shields, and spacecraft that were uniquely human, a fusion of creativity, practicality, and sheer determination. The first step in this new era came when the human forces, organized under a centralized command, launched their first full-scale exploration of the galaxy. They had spent months preparing, and now the time had come to reach out to the stars. There was no going back. Humanity's destiny was now in their own hands. Captain Tan was not only a military leader, but also the guiding force behind this new direction. She understood the weight of the responsibility she carried, and with each decision, she demonstrated a keen strategic mind. But more importantly, she embodied the spirit of humanity. Relentless, unwavering, and determined. Her leadership was built not just on tactics, but on inspiration. She understood that the war was not just about defeating an enemy. It was about proving humanity's worth to the galaxy, showing that their place among the stars was not a fluke, but a reality. With Tan at the helm, the human fleet embarked on its first diplomatic mission, heading to neighboring star systems where they had previously established weak ties with other species. It was a dangerous mission, an invitation for both opportunity and threat. But Captain Tan knew that the risk was worth it. The Kuk-Kamsu were not the only threat humanity would face. There were other, darker forces in the galaxy, forces that had watched humanity's victory and now had reason to fear it. The humans' first major diplomatic contact was with the Kautil, a mysterious race of beings who had made their home in the depths of a neighboring star system. The Kautil were known for their advanced technological prowess, but also for their neutrality in galactic conflicts. They were a peaceful species, seemingly uninterested in involving themselves in the struggles of other races. Yet, as humanity's message of unity and resilience spread, the Kautil took notice. Captain Tan's first meeting with the Kautil leaders was tense. They had never dealt with humans before, and their first impression was skeptical at best. The Kautil had seen countless species rise and fall, and they were cautious in offering any aid or allegiance. But as Tan spoke of humanity's future, of their desire to contribute to the galaxy not through conquest, but through cooperation, something shifted in the Kautil's approach. They had never encountered a species quite like humanity, a species that, even in the face of destruction, had been capable of turning their fate around. "We do not offer alliances lightly," the Kautil leader, Oren, said, his voice calm but authoritative. "Many have come to us with promises of peace and cooperation, only to turn against us once they gained our trust. Why should we believe you are any different?" Tan stood firm, meeting his gaze. "Because we have no other choice. We know what it's like to be on the brink of annihilation. But we've also learned that survival is not enough. We must build something greater. We can offer you not just technology or resources, but a chance to create something new together. A future that is not bound by the mistakes of the past, but shaped by our combined strength." Oren considered her words carefully. The Kautil were a species of few words, but they were also wise and pragmatic. After what seemed like an eternity of silence, Oren spoke again. "We will offer you a limited alliance. We shall see what your people can truly offer before we commit fully. But know this, Captain Tan, your survival and your future depend on how you forge these alliances. Should you fail, you will face more than just the Kuk-Kamsu." The agreement, though cautious, was a significant step. Humanity had made its first true ally in the galaxy. This would open the door for future partnerships, future collaborations, and, ultimately, humanity's place in the galaxy. But the Kautil were only one piece of the puzzle. There were countless other species, each with their own agendas, their own fears, and their own desires. Humanity's rise had been swift, but the path ahead was fraught with challenges. The humans knew that in order to survive, they would need to continue to push the boundaries of their creativity and determination. They could not rely on their past victories alone. Captain Tan understood that the rise of humanity's new force was not just about military might or technological advancement. It was about the unity of purpose that would bind them all together. A force that would not just fight for survival, but fight for a future where they could thrive, where they could make their mark on the stars. And so, with the Kautil alliance solidified, the humans began their next chapter. The war was far from over, but humanity was no longer a species on the edge of extinction. They had shown the galaxy their strength, and they had earned their place in the stars. The rise of humanity had begun, and with it, a new era of possibilities. Human strength in unity. The galactic stage was vast, and humanity's place within it had, until recently, been nothing more than a blip on the radar. However, after their stunning victory against the Kuk-Kamsu and the rise of their newfound alliances, the human race had become more than just a footnote. They had proven their resolve and their ingenuity, showing that they were capable of much more than mere survival. They were capable of thriving. But now, humanity faced the greatest challenge of all, unity. As the human colonies began to rebuild and expand, a sense of purpose began to take root among the people. They were no longer scattered settlers trying to make do on remote planets. They had forged an identity. The defeat of the Kukkamsu was no longer just a tale of victory. It had become a symbol of what humanity could accomplish when they worked together. The very core of their strength lay not in their individual achievements, but in their collective effort, a unity that had been born from the fires of war and had been tempered by the harsh realities of survival. Captain Ilaritan, still at the helm of the human forces, understood the importance of unity. She had led her people through a battle that had seemed unwinnable, and now her leadership would be tested once again. The time for just fighting to survive had passed. Now, the time had come to build a future, not just for the human colonies, but for their place in the galaxy. Under her guidance, humanity began to focus not only on expanding their territory, but on forging a culture of cooperation and shared purpose. The human colonies, once isolated from one another, began to integrate their resources, their knowledge, and their people. The formation of the Unified Human Front, UHF, was the cornerstone of this new era. The UHF was not just a military alliance. It was a coalition of scientists, engineers, diplomats, and leaders, all working toward a common goal: to secure humanity's future among the stars. The UHF quickly became a beacon of hope in a galaxy still rife with conflict. While many species continued to see humans as little more than upstarts, their actions began to speak louder than words. Human ingenuity, when combined with their unity, made them an undeniable force. Each colony contributed its unique strengths to the whole, whether through technological innovation, agricultural expertise, or tactical acumen. There was no longer a gap between the human settlements. They were one people, bound by the knowledge that only by working together could they ensure their survival. Chief Engineer Lian Zhao, whose work had been integral to turning the tide of the Kukkamsu War, now found himself at the heart of a new mission: building an interstellar fleet capable of defending humanity not just from the Kukkamsu, but from any other threat that might arise. Zhao and his team of engineers worked tirelessly, crafting ships that combined human technology with what they had learned from the remnants of alien encounters. These new ships were a marvel of design, faster, more efficient, and better armed than anything humanity had previously dreamed of. They were not just tools of war. They were symbols of the human spirit, a representation of what could be achieved when humanity worked together, with no borders or divisions between them. The UHF's efforts were not limited to just technology and military strength. The human colonies also began to focus on education and knowledge sharing. Universities and research centers sprang up across the colonies, bringing together the brightest minds from every corner of human society. No longer confined to Earth, human scholars, artists, and philosophers began to explore ideas that were once considered impossible. They began to look beyond the immediate threats of survival and began to think about the long term. What kind of future humanity wanted to create in the stars? Meanwhile, humanity's diplomatic efforts were paying off. With the Katil now as allies, they began to form relationships with other races in the galaxy, extending the olive branch of cooperation to species that had once viewed humans as insignificant or even dangerous. It was not easy. Many races still viewed the humans with suspicion, unwilling to trust the newcomers who had shaken up the galactic order. But with each successful negotiation, with each new treaty, humanity's reputation continued to grow. They had proven their worth, not just through their military prowess, but through their ability to collaborate, to listen, and to build partnerships that benefited everyone involved. Captain Tan knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but it would also be filled with opportunities. The unified human force would not simply be a player in the galactic arena. They would be a leader, setting an example for others to follow. Tan understood that the true power of humanity lay not in their weapons or their technology, but in their ability to come together, to put aside their differences, and to fight for a common cause. In this vast and ever-changing galaxy, that was humanity's greatest strength. Humanity's growing influence did not go unnoticed. The Kuk-Kamsu, licking their wounds after their defeat, were not the only species watching humanity's rise. Other races, both benevolent and malevolent, had begun to take an interest in the UAF's rapid growth. Some saw humanity as a new hope, a force for balance in a galaxy teetering on the edge of war. Others, however, saw them as a potential threat, a species with the potential to upset the delicate balance of power. As the UHF expanded, it began to encounter resistance from some of the more established and powerful civilizations in the galaxy. These species had lived in a fragile peace for millennia, their power based on maintaining the status quo. They feared that humanity's rise would disrupt that balance, and they were willing to go to great lengths to prevent it. Diplomacy had worked so far, but Captain Tan knew that peace was not guaranteed. Humanity would soon have to prove its strength once again, not with weapons, but with its resolve. It was clear that humanity's true test had just begun. The galaxy was not a place where power was easily gained, and it was even harder to maintain. But humanity had one advantage that no other species could claim: their capacity for unity. The UHF was more than just a coalition. It was a symbol of everything humanity stood for. And as long as they remained united, they would not just survive. They would shape the future. The return of the Kuk-Kamsu. The peace humanity had worked so hard to build was fragile. The Kuk-Kamsu, once defeated and forced to retreat after their disastrous first encounter with the humans, had been nursing their wounds in the dark recesses of the galaxy. But they had not forgotten. Their pride had been shattered, their reputation marred by the humiliation of their first defeat at the hands of what they had once considered a primitive species. They were ruthless, and they had only one way to restore their honor. They would return to finish what they started. Humanity had known this moment would come. The brief respite after the initial invasion had allowed them time to regroup, to expand, and to solidify their newfound alliances. But deep in the recesses of their minds, humanity had always understood that their fight for survival was not yet over. The Kuk-Kamsu were coming back, not just for revenge, but to make an example of humanity. They would not allow a race so weak, so insignificant by their standards, to continue to stand in their way. Captain Ilaritan, standing at the helm of the newly formed human fleet, stared out into the expanse of space. The stars glittered before her, as though mocking the fragile peace humanity had struggled to create. There was a calm before the storm, a silence that felt heavier than it should have. Her crew, though skilled and battle-hardened, felt it too. The looming threat of the Kuk-Kamsu's return was an undeniable presence in their lives, a shadow cast over their every decision, every movement. They could not afford to let their guard down. Tan had always believed in the power of unity, in the resilience of the human spirit. But she knew, as much as she hated to admit it, that the humans were still far from ready to face the might of the Kuk-Kamsu. The peaceful years spent rebuilding had given humanity time to grow, to form alliances, and to enhance their technologies. But they had no experience fighting a war on the scale the Kuk-Kamsu would bring. The new human fleet was formidable, an impressive mix of human ingenuity and the advanced technology gained from the Katil and other species. The ships were faster, more durable, and more powerful than anything humanity had previously developed. And yet, the crew of every ship knew that the true strength of humanity was not in their weaponry, but in their unity, in the drive to protect everything they had fought for. The human race had a fire that no amount of advanced technology could replicate, and that was what made them dangerous to their enemies. The first indication that the Kuk-Kamsu were returning came in the form of a garbled distress signal sent from one of the human colonies on the outer rim. It was a warning, a cry for help that echoed across the communication channels. The Kuk-Kamsu had arrived, and they had arrived in force. Their massive warships appeared without warning, materializing out of the shadows of deep space like vengeful ghosts. The fleet was far larger than the humans had anticipated, far larger than they had ever believed possible. The Kuk-Kamsu had not just come to destroy humanity, they had come to obliterate everything the humans had built, to erase them from the galaxy once and for all. Their warships were massive, heavily armored, and bristling with weapons far beyond the humans' capacity for defense. The initial human forces stationed at the outer colonies fought valiantly, but the Kamsu were relentless. They used their sheer firepower to obliterate everything in their path, their forces pushing forward like an unstoppable tidal wave. Humanity had learned a great deal since the first invasion, but one thing became clear very quickly. No amount of preparation could have fully prepared them for this new wave of attack. The Kamsu were not just using brute force. They had evolved, adapted, and honed their tactics, learning from their initial failure. They were smarter, faster, and deadlier. They had a singular purpose: to break humanity's spirit, to show the galaxy that even the most resilient of species could not stand against the might of the Kamsu. But humanity would not break. Despite the overwhelming odds, they stood their ground. Captain Tan made the difficult decision to rally her forces in a last-ditch effort to hold back the Kamsu, to buy time for the rest of humanity to regroup and prepare for a larger-scale defense. The entire fleet, including every ship they could muster from their allies, would make a stand. They would fight not for survival, but for their very right to exist. The battle that ensued was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Kamsu launched their attack with brutal efficiency, their ships raining destruction down upon the human colonies. The humans, though outnumbered and outgunned, used every advantage they had learned from their previous encounters with the Kamsu. They used their environment, their technology, and their unbreakable will to create pockets of resistance that would buy them precious time. For every human ship that was destroyed, for every colony that fell, a new wave of resistance was born. The humans fought not just for their lives, but for something greater: their identity, their future, and their belief that they could carve out a place for themselves in a galaxy that had seen countless species rise and fall. Captain Tan coordinated the human fleet from her flagship, a powerful vessel designed to serve as both a command center and a symbol of human resilience. She knew that if they could hold their position long enough, if they could just delay the Kamsu's advance, they might be able to turn the tide. But the question was whether they had the strength to hold out long enough to make a difference. As the battle raged on, the humans found themselves on the edge of defeat. The Kamsu were relentless, and each wave of their assault pushed the humans further back. But in the darkest moment, when all seemed lost, a new voice rang out, one that resonated with every human soldier, every fighter in the fleet. It was the voice of unity, a cry that spread across the human lines like wildfire. The humans would not give up. They would not allow themselves to be crushed under the boot of the Kamsu. And then, as though drawn by the very strength of that cry, the tides began to shift. The first reinforcements from the Katil and other allies arrived, their ships appearing from the depths of space. They were not here to win the battle. They were here to give humanity the chance to win it themselves. The tide turned, slowly at first, then with increasing force. The human fleet, bolstered by the unexpected strength of their allies, began to push back against the Kamsu. The battle was far from over, but the human spirit had proven once again that it could not be easily crushed. And as the humans fought, they sent a message that would echo through the galaxy for generations. Humanity had risen, and they would not fall. Not today.